We're here to have a good time. We're here to have some fun. We're here to liven things up a little here on this lovely first evening of June. Happy Pride, everybody. Now you know.
I actually found my shirt. It's just not washed, so I'll wear it on the next one.
Oh, man, I should get a fun one. I'm sure that somewhere out there is like a shark robot or somewhere store that sells the gray romantic flag as a T-shirt. I like the green on it. It's a fun green.
I just got one that had all the all those ace sexualities on it.
Yep.
So that's just what I went with. It had a green dragon with like a lot of purple.
Oh yeah.
And purple's my favorite color for a number of reasons.
And hey, dragons, good topic for us as we make our long-awaited return to the long month of dragons. It's two kinds of long. It's going on for a while. Like a dragon, I'm not sure this month will ever truly die of old age, but certainly we might find a way to violently kill it before long. That's how
finals sure did try,
right?
Finals tried to kill it.
Finals tried to kill it. You know, we've been through some times. We scheduled guests like the moment we had the idea to schedule guests, and that really didn't pan out well when we had this idea for a long month.
Yeah.
Scheduling is a fascinating and interesting thing, and if you have critiques, maybe you should start your own podcast before leveling them at us, you whiners.
Don't be sensitive, Noah.
I'm not sensitive. I'm just really angry about the things that offend me emotionally and make me feel small. In today's return to form with the Long Month of Dragons, we are back in the world of Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Riders of Pern. Ladies and gentlemen, sci-fi has never pretended it was fantasy so hard.
Honestly? Fucking mood, though.
So, we are back. It is the second book in the Harper Hall trilogy, which is the YA side series that Anne McCaffrey put out there, because our main series have, and we've mentioned this before, but I'm going to say it again, a lot of telepathic dragon sex. Just a lot of it. I mean, it's not everywhere, but it is there, and it is a thing.
You make me want to read the main series less and less. Like, I'm not sex repulsed, I'm just not interested.
I mean, it's not as bad as your average, like, Stephen King book. It's just a thing that is there.
I've only read 2 of those for a multitude of reasons.
It's not there. I mean, you know, he is practically, you know, I think that secretly he is just trying to pad the things he really wants to write and a bunch of like horror stuff that he really doesn't care about, because he really just wants to write the exciting things in the middle between all the horror.
A lot of times I just want to write dialogue, and I come up with random extra actions for the characters to do to break up the dialogue. We've all been there, Noah. I don't know why you're calling him out for it.
It's like the inverse of that one character in Bones who like is got a best-selling novel. You know, it's a mystery novel, but all the fans want to talk about it is the romance. But she didn't write the romance. She doesn't know how to write that, so she had a friend write everything that wasn't the mystery.
Wasn't that Dr. Bones?
That was Dr. Bones, actually. I think it was. I didn't watch the series. I just watched the one episode.
I am pretty sure that was Dr. I think her name is Brenda Bones. I used to watch every single episode of that. I for a long time, I was on like a CSI Bones kick. I got out of it when I realized cops suck all around. It doesn't matter what kind.
Ah, man, there are no good cops. Heartbreaking. Sad if true.
But that's not what we're here to talk about.
Well, we've got to fill out the intro a bit longer than usual, because the truth is there's not much to do with our usual questions. Why did I catch that? Because I read the series as a kid. This is another book my dad had. I was reading the books because, again, these are the only ones that you could let a kid read if you're the sort of adult that restricts what your kid reads.
I was more so saying how, like, we've seemed to skip past the introduction.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I'm Noah, by the by.
And I'm your newbie, Tiger Eyes 45.
I am the host for this week. Let's follow that one bit of advice that we wrote down when we started this podcast and try and explain things for people that might be listening in for the first time. Welcome to You Didn't Catch That, where one of us hasn't caught a thing until now, when they've caught the thing. And now we talk about the thing that we've caught, and the reasons why we may or may not have caught it in the past, and our thoughts on it now that we've caught it.
And the
There you go.
thing is, as Noah previously said, the book Dragonsinger, which is the second book following our main character Menolly in the world of Dragons of Pern?
Yep, the Dragon Riders of Pern world.
I got so close to getting 100% right. You gotta give me credit for that.
This second book does see the arrival of Menolly, who has long wanted to be a harper, be a musician / teacher, storyteller, spy, but don't mention that. Don't mention that they're all secretly a part of a spy thing.
We have to talk about that because I did not notice, and now upon looking at the stuff I highlighted, that makes a lot more fucking sense. It's like the Bard's College from Skyrim, only like it's obvious in Skyrim that the Bard's College is just filled with spies, and like in this, it's not so obvious.
It's very they play it very close to close to your hand. You have it. I think it probably only makes. I mean, it's there you can put it together. I think if you're like put it potentially, but it helps to have like the broader context of seeing what like Master Harper Robinson is up to, and the other two books that are happening at about the other book that's happening at about the same time as this.
Well, before we get into all of that, how about you describe? I'm like fucking with the tool on my desk. Sorry if you see flashes of
just
purple.
to quit.
But how about you describe what actually is going on in this book? Because
you mean
I haven't caught this because I've never heard of the series until you introduced it to me. So.
Entering our first segment, as it happened, Menolly, having mostly recovered from outrunning Thread and shredding her feet, arrives at the Harper Hall to finally get into that whole career that she wanted to, but was abused out of because of her horrible, no good, very bad parents.
Parents suck sometimes.
Parents suck sometimes. It's not great.
Why is it parents are never good in anything we cover? Parents are always shitheads in the topics we cover. Like the media we cover, they're pretty awful.
Yeah, you're right. I can't deny it. I'll have to find and I just suggested that we do Immortal Hulk for Halloween, so I mean, no help there. Shoot. We'll figure something out with good parents in it eventually.
It just feels like we shit on parents a lot.
Maybe we've just all seen all the good stuff that has parents in it, so we can't recommend it to each other because we're just too excited about media with good parents.
Hilda has a good mom in it. I'll give it that.
Matilda?
Hilda.
Oh.
It's an animated series on Netflix.
I'll have to. Maybe we'll have to add that to the list.
Halloween. That's our Halloween one from my pick.
Okay, call it now. Wait for November to see our Hilda episodes. So, as I was saying, she arrives at the hall, and obviously things are a bit of a mess. Hall is surprised to get her a bit. Master Harper Robinson, in charge of the hall, is not too surprised. He's been hunting down for her. And the first thing he wants is her to spend the first week sort of meeting up with all the main masters and figure out what her skill level is so they can decide moving forward how best to use her. Because, of course, he wants her desperately. He wants her to keep writing songs because her songs are excellent, very catchy, and very useful for spreading new ideas. A thing that the Master Harper really wants to happen because if you hadn't noticed, a lot of conservative, shallow-minded people are on Pern, and sometimes conservative and shallow-minded people cause a lot of harm. Especially if you're a small child, again, maybe a little girl that wants to do something like be a harper. You see, it all wraps around itself. It's like a consistent core that Menolly was designed to fill. Anyway, she goes on. She has a bit of some fun on an adventure. She meets the bright and colorful characters, and sometimes dingy, sometimes very loud characters of the masters. Demonstrating her proficiency, looking at the skill of an instrument, writing music, basics of music theory, all the good stuff, loud and fun characters, one and all. She starts to make friends and enemies among the student body, none of the other girls really like her because women, am I right? And also none of the other girls are actual regular apprentices. They're just like paid music students from like noble families.
She is seriously the embodiment of I'm not like other girls, while
Yeah.
never actually behaving like that. Like she wants to be like the other girls instead. But they're just like, nah, you're not like the other girls.
It's very, yeah. That's a motif that, let's start planning some threads while we're here. Remember in the last one how I mentioned that Menolly was like the kind of best possible version of a lot of fanficky self-inserty tropes? This is
Yeah.
where it gets a lot stronger, right? Because she was already kind of good at everything and really abused and bad relationship with parents, and it eventually gets everything she wants. Now she's also got the not like other girls thing, which is mostly subtext in the last one and is now being hoisted upon her, as you so pointedly said. So it comes out a lot more in this one. Mentally, not like other girls, ultimate fanfic insert, but also it works really well because she's well written and like very clearly designed. Again, to like fit into a thematic niche in this world that makes a point, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because it turns out good writers can do stuff like that. Who knew? I didn't know that. Did you? We're allowed to do that? Shoot. It's not all doom and gloom, though. Yeah, she may have some abusive other ladies that she doesn't have to go to class with, and also the woman in charge of the women's dorm is horrible, horrible, horrible to her, and hates her fire lizards. Did I mention the 9 fire lizards she's bringing? She has 9 fire lizards, a thing literally no other human being on the face of the planet can say. Uh, and so obviously that's attracting some eyes, some friendly, some not so. Among the friendly is a small singer student named Pimer, a bit of a rapscallion, he would have fit in among the Dickensian street urchins, if you know what I'm saying. Very smart, knows what he's doing. Maybe a bit of a hooligan, but also a good friend somehow, and a good ally to have if you're new in town.
He straight up introduces himself by saying, wait, you don't actually have fire lizards, right? Oh shit, you do. You should hang out with me more.
We should hang together.
He gets called out on it later, and like Menolly just assumes that's why he's still hanging around her. And he's like, I am hurt and offended. I didn't like hanging out with you. Now, Menolly. Now I do. I totally was after that right off the bat, though. Let's be honest.
Hey, by the by, when is that queen going to have her first clutch? I mean, I'm not asking. I'm just not asking. Just hey, maybe if you could, maybe save a one for a little Pimer.
You know the Dragon Riders too? Oh, Menolly, my best buddy.
My actual best friend, Menolly. Would you come and hang out with me, Menolly? I mean, he's a nice kid, really. He, bit of a tramp, bit of a nice fellow.
His honesty is hilarious.
He's very frank, except when he's really not.
Yeah, no, it's great, and that's really smart. We should talk about that in a little bit.
So, besides that, she also has Sylvina, who's sort of like the head woman, takes care of all the things here, keeps the hall running, and who's also, the mom, here to take care of Menolly and give her clothes and food and, emotional support and get her out of the abusive dorm room when things become clearly dangerous.
Felina and the other Dragon Riders who wanted to, like, adopt her and keep her around forever aren't here in this book. So Sylvina fills that role. Yeah, I said
the
her
part
name
of
right.
Melina will be played by Sylvina today.
Is this Sylvina?
It's Sylvina, I think.
Sylvina?
I just can't...
Okay, so I said it right.
I'm just trying to remember who the head woman at Bendenweir is, because that was the woman that let's see, what's her name? Minora. Yes, the part of Minora will be played by Sylvina. I do it too. We're just going to confuse the names a lot. They're great names. She has a very consistent naming system, except, of course, for the fact that sometimes you just forget, especially if, for example, you read them really quickly, or maybe you read them a couple of weeks ago and haven't refreshed your memory all that well.
Or the naming conventions are so constantly used regularly that a lot of the names sound the exact same but have a word change, and you just don't know or care enough about the characters to remember which one had the weird word change.
That's how you know she's a hardcore fantasy writer. It's because she loves to do the Sauron Saruman thing, which is just, you know.
I used to call them the old wizard and the eye because I couldn't remember which one was which when I was a kid. So the old evil wizard and the eye were how I referred to the two big villains in Lord of the Rings.
I mean, that's the only way you can do that, right? I don't think there's any other way of delineating them. And then, of course, you know, you get into the hardcore Tolkien stuff and you find out actually everybody has a dozen names. Let's talk about Morgoth, later called Melkor at some point. Or is he Melkor, later called Morgoth? I can never remember which.
It's been a while. I've not read the Silmarillion since high school. I did not finish it, but neither did Tolkien, so...
Just coming after the dead linguist, aren't you?
I'm not. I'm simply saying...
This is a subtweet.
I'm simply saying it's fine that I didn't finish it. Don't at me.
I never finished the trilogy, is the thing you have to understand. I found his prose to be dry as all get out, and I could not emotionally engage with it in high school. I need to try again.
It's not for everyone.
So, anyway, back to the world of Anne McCaffrey's Dragons. Her week, Menolly's week goes all right, actually. Her main problem seems to be the anxiety that she gained, you know. Besides the abuse and new environment, it's just anxiety and dealing with a handful of people that don't like her, especially one particular master that's really mean and like clearly doesn't want a woman to be involved and is offended at the notion that a woman is so skilled because she's really darn skilled, guys. I cannot stress enough how good she is at everything. And they go into some more details about how she got to be so skilled. Like, oh, yeah, she spent a couple of years working at this. She actually was the main teacher for several years before, you know, the old Master Harper died. It's just that her parents didn't care then because somebody needed to play it while the Harper was working.
No, they very much cared.
Yeah.
I mean, they just couldn't stop her because they needed her.
They disliked it, but that was somebody needed to do it. And the Master and the Harper wanted it to happen, so they weren't going to stop her. Whatever, you know, very clear, solid reasons for everything happening because it's good writing. Okay. So what next? Oh yeah, first major traumatic episode. In the middle of the night, there's a bit of a. Oh, let's see here. First major traumatic episode of the kind of like the two major ones that hit us. In the middle of the night. There's kind of a psychic blast that goes throughout all the dragons. And also
shit! Yeah, that happened.
A little bit. When big drama is happening off in the distance in the other book. I mean, at Bend and Weir. Very exciting stuff is happening in the other book.
So I thought that was the dragon, not the lady, until they said, oh no, that was the lady who lost her dragon last book. I thought that was the dragon who flew off on its own, like shouting, don't leave me alone. I didn't realize it was her.
No, it's very weird. Like the specific, I won't go into the details of the specific events, but it's an episode about, you know, one of these dragon riders that we met earlier having a profound moment of, you know, trauma and loss and projecting that as far as possible to try and get the dragons to come together and save the day when the person that she loves tries to go on an expedition to the Red Star and eliminate the thread right where they are. But it turns out going to a passing planetoid full of organic flesh-eating fungus is maybe a bad idea when you're a bunch of organic beings. So it goes badly for him and his dragon. They both get skinned alive, but they manage to teleport back. And thanks
to... seriously that bad?
Yeah, oh yeah, it's terrible.
That's not mentioned in the book.
It's really terrible.
It's just mentioned that they both fell back to Earth, falling unconscious, landing on several dragons to slow them. Yep,
they are...
holy fuck.
It's terrible. It goes really bad for them.
Holy fuck.
It is a miracle they survived, even with Breck's miracle psychic blast. But anyway, Menolly experiences that brief moment, and it's sort of... it re-emphasizes a continuing thread in the book, which is, of course, that she's deeply connected backwards and forwards emotionally to the fire lizards. And also, again, this is the side books. We've got to keep peeking in and seeing what's happening in the main books just for fun, because why else are you doing a side book?
So that's actually what sparks them learning how do the fire lizards work and how are they connected and can they communicate with dragons. Sparks all this conversation. Robinton's like, I think they actually are all connected to each other emotionally. And which basically leaves Menolly to realize, oh, that might actually be the case. I didn't think that was the case because fire lizards aren't dragons, but that might actually be the case. Robinson basically has to explain everything to her that's happening, which I can forgive because, again, she's been through a lot.
And also, she wouldn't know what's happening because she's a small girl from a Seahold.
She'll come up with answers to stuff that's happening. Like in the last book, she thought maybe the dragons could read her emotions. But then she nearly died, and she was like, nah, that just must have been my trauma being like, oh, yeah, you only thought they could understand your emotions. That wasn't what was actually happening. There's a lot. Menolly's been through a lot.
She's going through a lot, and it's just one more terrible episode. The big the big climax, is of course when there's a big festival day, big day off, everybody comes to town, bubbly pies for everyone, big dances, big expectations. Fight breaks out between Menolly and the main bully girl, who is, peak popular girl, pulling all sorts of like, oh yes, I'm high ranking, and oh, I can't stand you, and oh, you're full of yourself, and all sorts of,
Which Menolly is certainly not full of herself.
And tries to take the money that the Master Harper gave her to buy herself a belt, like the only money she's ever had
in her entire life.
In her entire life, she tries to take
father figure.
Her father figure gave it to her to buy some clothes, and she's like, no, I call insult, and then pulls a knife on her. And then
she's like, I'm sick of y'all. Shut the fuck up.
I'm not taking this anymore. And fight breaks out. Everybody gets involved. Her friend Pimer gets involved. Camo, a man that works in the kitchen and has been helping feed all the fire lizard, gets involved. We'll get to Camo. We have stuff to talk about with relation to Camo. All the boyfriends of the evil women get involved. The one girl that is kind of friends with Menolly gets involved, and her boyfriend is a big kerfuffle. And then Master Harper comes in, angry glares at everybody, and we all try to resolve this without anybody getting kicked out or abandoned. The Lord of the Hold comes in and is like, hey, who's beating up my son? And the Master Harper's like, nothing important. Hey, have you met Menolly? Let's talk to her about dragon stuff.
That's not why he comes in. He comes in because he's like, why is my dragon insisting I come over here? He doesn't even find out his son got the shit beaten out of him by a girl.
Okay. Menolly just clocks the kid. I mean, she blasts the man.
He kicked Pimer and Menolly was out for blood.
Oh, yeah. Pimer, she's like a little dude, hasn't even hit puberty left. Yeah, and, this big old guy, Menolly just, rocks him. Just drops the man in one go. And, of course, the thing happens that has been happening every time, the Masters have stressed her out or been too abusive to her. All her dragons appear and start screeching, except this time they start scratching and attacking, which is why the Lord Holder comes in, because he also has a fire lizard, and she got upset, and he was like, hey, what was this about?
I do like how the fire lizard was upset on Menolly's behalf. Not the Lord's son's behalf.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
just like, fuck that kid. Menolly's cool.
The Master Harper,
Father's favorite pet likes Menolly more than you.
And of course, the truth is, as the Master Harper kind of implies, and Sibel, one of the journeymen that's Menolly's friend, points out, Lord Gra has a bunch of sons, but only one person that can tell him how to take care of this fire lizard.
So,
and that's
really, what's he gonna do?
So really, what's he gonna do? That evening is also Menolly's first experience as a performer. She loves it in a public venue that isn't, her horrible, abusive, no good, very bad home. It's exhausting, but it's a good time. She gets to play some of her own original songs. Holy cow, never a thing she was allowed to do back home. Finally opens up about the trauma and abuse that she received at her, to her friends.
Made one of the journeymen feel like a fucking dumbass.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely made Sibel feel like a buffoon. And then the book ends in the Great Hall when the Master Harper gives a Dumbledore speech, and then Menolly gets picked to rise up to Journeyman because she already has all the skills.
So why would she have to stay as an apprentice?
Why would she have to stay as an apprentice? She's like super skilled at everything, and she needs to get working on that songwriting already. Come on. Come on.
We need you. You don't know why we need you, but we need you.
We really need you to help change the hearts and minds of the people of Pern. For altruistic reasons, I assure you. Don't worry, it's not scary.
It's not scary. You're not going to be a child soldier yet.
You're kind of sort of a propagandist in the strictest sense.
Holy shit, she is! I'm
like
not
in a
shocked.
good way.
I'm not shocked. See, I had to be right not to like Robinson.
I mean, you know, yeah, he's a propagandist, but he's trying to make a very conservative world be a bit more open-minded. And really, isn't that the propaganda that every writer wants to be making?
Everything's propaganda. But this does mean we get to move on to my favorite time, Raving Character Corner!
That's not right.
Menolly, when she played Dominic's song for the first time.
Yeah, that's the one chord she did wrong because of her busted hand. I think I meant... Close enough. Anybody know how to do an open E minor on a ukulele? I've got a chart right in front of me. I'm not sure I've figured it out.
Nope.
Do you like this better than the scat? This is what I thought would be more fun than the scat.
It's a different kind of scat when you think about it.
Rate and comment below with your thoughts about this versus the scat.
Alright, so let's get into the first character, who's the most important character, Menolly. All-star Menolly.
Oh, yeah, Menolly.
The girl, the belle of the ball, Menolly.
Belle of the ball. And it's funny you'd say Belle, because talk about characters that are also kind of sort of peak fanfic self-inserty characters, but are also kind of pulling it off. Belle, also Belle.
Which Belle? You have to be way more specific.
Belle of Beauty and the Beast fame. Animated movie,
okay,
you know,
that's fair.
Nominated for Best Picture.
Like,
Pinnacle
Belle
of
is
the
such
Disney
a common
Renaissance.
name used. I had no idea which one you were talking about.
Bella Swan. Oh man, let's talk about Bella Swan.
Nope, I didn't read the books. I never will. Let's move on now.
Menolly is fun.
She continues to be.
She's a fun character to analyze and also just to read and like follow with because she's so. She's nice. What can I say? I like her. Nice. She's nice. She's a really nice gal. It's fun to spend time with her.
Honestly, I know the last episode when we talked about the first book with Menolly, the reason why I don't think she annoyed me, despite like her whining, which was very appropriate for everything she had gone through, and despite like how everything was kind of handed to her after she nearly died to escape the abuse. It's because she's so nice.
Yeah, that's the thing. By all rights,
she genuinely cares, and not everyone treats Camo right in the books. I have a lot of issue with how the kitchen staff treats Camo, but Menolly actually cares.
Yeah, there's a lot to be. The thing about I mean, quick insert here. The thing about Camo,
and
Camo is like,
I love that. Menolly cares about everybody. Except for if you wrong her, then she's gonna pull a knife on you, bitch.
If you wrong her enough, leave her traumatized and angry enough, and she's in a supportive environment where she feels confident about protecting herself, and she's around friends, she will pull a knife on you, actually, and sick her dragon horde on you.
If she thinks her friend is dead because he's not moving on the ground because he's getting the shit kicked out of him, she'll pull a knife on you, it turns out.
Meek protagonist syndrome. I wouldn't do anything to protect myself, but if you kick my friend, I will stab you in the streets. In front of your boyfriend.
In front of your boyfriend whose dad owns this whole property.
Do I look like I care? I'm from the Seahold, you fool. I'm from Half Circle.
Let's go.
We gut each other like they're fish. My mom did this to me. You want to see what I could do to you?
I'm already sunburned. You don't gotta make my face more red. What the fuck? Yeah, no, this is not because of lighting. This is because I work outside in the sun all day.
This is because, I mow, like, a lot, and I don't do sunscreen proper, like.
But, okay, Okay, so Menolly is so nice, and I do think that contributes the most to why
Yeah.
you're able to handle everything getting handed to her, because one, you already know all the shit she went through. The whole first book is about her going through shit. She only gets to relax for a chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Two, it's already been pretty much set up that, hey, she's been playing for years. Like, she spent most of her life learning how to play and write this kind of music.
Yeah.
So she's been pretty well trained by the guy who was probably the most skilled teacher that the hall had.
Yeah.
And so with those two things, you're pretty willing to just see her have some good stuff happen and get handed to her, because at this point she deserves it. But the entire time she's thinking, "Holy shit, I don't deserve this. What is everyone else going to do to me as a reaction to this happening?"
Yeah.
She is
If you like,
so
yeah.
aware of her status and her position in life.
That's sort of that really helps you, because you see sort of the anxiety and fear and how getting all of this isn't really solving all her problems, because her problems don't have to do with what she can and can't do, or what she doesn't and doesn't have. They have to do with how other people have treated her, and are learning how to like deal with people that are acting differently around her, and how to move past where she was sort of trained to be. These are a lot more internal character conflicts than they have to do with extrinsic stuff, which is good, because if she didn't have stuff getting handed to her extrinsically, she wouldn't be able to progress internally.
Exactly. And I think that's also why this book really benefits from there not being a lot of like action in it.
Yeah.
It's mostly just Menolly running around trying to get used to this new place she's never been in before. And as a result, it's all pretty much lackluster stuff. The biggest thing is the fight, and that doesn't last long. It's like 2 pages long.
It's like, here's, the exciting things are, the night trauma and the fight, and maybe some dragon eggs hatch at one point, or fire lizard eggs hatch.
That's pretty much it.
That's pretty much, every once in a while the fire lizards again will like show up when she's angry or terrified in a class, and the master will like respond in shock, or like, oh, so when the lady's pretty, the birds are pretty, or something. When the lady's angry, the birds are angry, something like that. It's very like, just adds to the social tension here.
Which I think that actually works in her favor, because
definitely,
she won't stand up for herself, but she doesn't have to, because her fire lizards are there, and they will make people learn to treat her right. Like, the masters actually changed some of their approaches to her, because she doesn't say she's upset, but her fire lizards make it known.
Yeah.
So again, even that comes from not her standing up for herself, but other people having to be like, hey, she's been through shit. Stop it. Stop it.
I mean, and that really, it is interesting to me, because at some point I'm just going to have to write like some or other essay on like the weird motif of women with, power in like genre fiction, having that power tied specifically to their emotions and their anger, and like them having power being like the main part of the story, which I'm sure a million women have written, but as a man, I'm sure I'll have a lot more insight that hasn't been put into it.
We've had that conversation before about psychics specifically, because every psychic female character, her power isn't a muscle to be trained, but it's based on emotions, and every male psychic is always, it's a muscle that has to be trained, and that is sexism.
It is weird, except for Carrie, that kind of did it both in a weird way.
Carrie kind of did it both, which was one of the 2 Stephen King novels I read.
Of course Carrie was the one you read.
I don't know what you want from me.
It's a good one. If you're going to have read only a couple of Stephen King books, as I have, also, Carrie's a good one to have read. It's good. He
wrote it out of spite, and honestly, I understand that.
I think that what the world is waiting for is for a black woman to make a Carrie movie that's like authentic to the book in the ways that none of the other ones have been, and inauthentic in ways that the adaptations have never been before, if you know what I mean.
I've only ever seen one Carrie movie, and it was the really old one, and I've only ever watched it like once, I remember, so I don't know. I don't know about that.
What's always bugged me, I mean, I haven't seen them either. Like, just off the cuff, what always bugs me is the same thing that bugged me the first time I saw the Ready Player One trailer, which is that all these weirdly, like, conventionally attractive main characters in in stories that are very specifically not about conventionally attractive people. Especially Carrie.
Yeah, but honestly, Menolly, while she fits into, her superpowers are connected to her emotions, I feel like Menolly kind of inverts the trope a little bit. Yeah. Because it's not about her expressing those emotions. It's about other people having to learn that she won't. She's not going to. She does not feel as if she's in a position to, because she spent her whole life getting abused and told she has to not show emotions and she has to be a certain way and she needs to be quiet, seen and not heard, obedient. Like, she's had to deal with all of this her entire life, so it makes sense why she's not expressing her emotions, even though not everybody knows her life story and they don't know why she's like that. They just...
Yeah.
The only way the masters can learn how to actually teach Menolly and treat her is because her fire lizards are making it known she's uncomfortable. Because she just won't. And if they didn't, she would never learn. So, I don't know. I do feel like it's a little bit of a version just simply due to the fact that she's, like, not submissing.
She's restrained.
Restraining. Yes. I'm sorry. I couldn't.
Now, why would those two words be connected in your brain?
Honestly, I think it's just because I used the word submissive, and then I thought submit, push down.
Yeah,
What's another word for push down? And I couldn't get to restrain.
Oh boy, it's very
Everything makes sense in my brain, so you can always figure out where the problem went.
The thing about Menolly, on the whole, I think, and and the story as a whole is, like we've been going over, there is a unshakable, logical, emotional core to the writing of this book and the way that Anne McCaffrey handles her writing, which is really admirable if you think about the way that she's writing these things. She's jumping back and forth in a timeline that she's written. She hasn't even gotten to the crazy stuff yet, when she does, runs back and does a prequel. This is sort of a weird side quel to another book. I don't
actually know.
But yeah, the point being just that there's an incredible stability to the story structure, and if you, like me, were poisoned by CinemaSins and look for internal consistency and structure as the main first barometer of writing quality, I don't actually, but I wanted to dig at CinemaSins for a bit there. This book has it in spades, and it works to its advantage in a lot of respects.
And if you're like me, and your main focus in stories is typically how characters act and treat other characters in stories, their dynamics, the relationship there is, this is really the book for you, because this whole book is just Menolly's relationships with other people and how that affects her life. She is out of the abusive situation. Now she has to learn how to be a human being again. And, she's always going to be a little human being, but Sylvina puts it best when she says, I think you've been alone for far too long, and I don't mean just in that cave.
Yeah.
Because she just doesn't know how to not act in a situation where she's not having to face a whole barrage of abuse right away. Which, again, I don't really like whiny characters, but I love characters that, really connect with other ones and are actually curious about people they've talked to before and think about them. And Menolly does just that. And I don't think she's whiny. Let me just clear that up.
Mm-hmm.
But you could describe her that way because she does whine. But I feel like all of her whining's legitimate.
In that she spends a lot of her time internally, mentally, facing anxieties and worries and fears, many of which may not be fully founded. It's difficult to write an anxious character that doesn't make him sound whiny, because as someone with, weird idiosyncrasies, we can sound pretty whiny. You have to be very in touch with their emotions to be able to convey that.
Menolly is almost the perfect example of a character who does have a lot of internal anxieties and insecurities, who doesn't come off as whiny because you know why they're all there.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it's just randomly thrown in to cause drama. It's like, no, this has been the issue the entire time. It's not just thrown in there to be interesting.
Oh.
But there are other characters in this book too, and one that you really like that I'm still on the fence about. Master Harper Robinson.
Master Harper Robinson, indeed, headest of honchos at the Harper Hall, and the man who so desperately wanted Menolly to get here just based on a couple of songs that you started a planet-wide search.
Yeah, which, the more I hear that, the less it makes sense to me. Because why would he use so much resources on finding Menolly? I don't... Yeah, you said it's because they need a good propagandist, but Menolly doesn't know that. I didn't know that reading it. It literally doesn't make sense. And I think that feeds even more into her anxiety of, like, why am I here? Why does everyone know my work? Why are they all so excited to see what I write next? What is this? Is this a bad thing?
Yeah.
Exactly what I was thinking, Menolly.
I think Robinson explains it pretty directly, though. I mean, you know, he has this sort of moment with her, you know, during one of their different private meetings where he says, what we need is somebody with songs that will stick in people's minds, you know, songs that are going to, you know, talk about new things from a new perspective. Like her Fire Lizard song, you know, like the things that she's written that he liked enough that he had copies sent around the world, you know. And, of course, like the song that she writes about the traumatic moment involving Breck and her dragon and the psychic blast that went around the world. She's, you know, she's very good at turning, you know, modern events and new, you know, elements of the world and emotional moments and putting them into songs in a way that people can understand. I think it's sort of, if I may posit a thread for us to discuss, it has a lot to do in the same way with why the Master Harper wants the dragon eggs all the time. Like he says, we want dragon eggs with these lord holders because maybe if they have a tiny dragon, they'll be a bit more empathetic with the people with the larger dragons, and maybe they'll be a bit more willing to listen and work with the people that are responsible for saving the planet every couple of hours. In the same way, I think her songs are to serve the same function. It's like what, you know, our old screenwriting professor would say, which is that, you know, movies, or in this case songs, are empathy generators. And if you want a more empathetic populace, you need somebody that can write new songs that talk about new experiences.
And that's fair and valid. And it makes sense when he explains it like that. But the whole beginning of the book, you don't have that information. And it's a very unsettling feeling that I kept waiting for him to be the big bad guy. I kept waiting for it. Like, until he explained that to her, I was like, he's gonna be an asshole. He seems nice, but he's gonna be an asshole.
What is he? What did you think he was hiding? I'm curious.
I thought he was literally using her. I thought he was gonna, like, steal her music or something, or, like, praise her until he figured out how she did writing, then copied that, and then kick her out of the hall or something. I don't know. I was waiting for something
steal
big
her
and
songwriting
bad to happen.
magic.
I did not trust him. And then he explained that, and it was a really sweet moment, and he talks to another one, and he has another one with her where he talks about how you have this amazing skill, but you're being held back in other areas, and you're never going to fully live your life if you don't grow past the areas you're being held back in, as well as using your amazing skill. And that felt like a genuine teaching moment, and that was one of the two moments that was like, okay, maybe he's not the bad guy, but we shall wait and see.
Reserving the right to be disappointed by the, you know, by the old man in charge.
I mean, I always reserve the right to be disappointed by older characters in anything, ever. They're usually my favorites, but at the same time, you're usually kind of shitty on to some level. Look at Hank Anderson from Detroit Become Human. Interesting character, but he is a cop.
Oh, boy. He's an odd man, that Robinson. Whenever we get to the rest of the books, I think you'll be interested to see. I'll be curious to see how your perspective on him changes when you see his face when he's around like the leadership of Pern.
Honestly, I think he's probably a shithead to him. I'm imagining Pimer, but with like more
Authority and
well-spoken.
respect.
More well-spoken Pimer. That's what I'm expecting.
You know, when you put it like that. Actually, that's not a bad metaphor. Oh, let's see here. Who else is worth discussing? You know, do you mind if we skip ahead? I would like to talk about Sylvina just because she's so nice.
She's also the one she's also the person in charge right under Robinson. Somehow she's gotten everybody in the hall to listen to her when the Master Harper isn't around. And honestly, respect.
Mad respect.
Mad respect. I really want to know more about her specifically and how she came to rise to such like a position of power without having to come off as like a bitch. Because she doesn't.
She is maximum power and no threat.
She has like some threat, but she doesn't have to exert a lot of it to get people to listen to her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something really refreshing as a female reader, because oftentimes a lot of women in power are perceived like they're in charge, but everyone's constantly trying to undermine them, and the only reason why they are still in that seat of power is because they are a bitch. And that's fine. I have nothing wrong with that kind of character setup, but it's really relieving to see people aren't trying to constantly undermine her here. She's just in charge, and she's worked hard to be there, and people respect her for working hard. And that's so comforting.
Oh boy. We're going to have some interesting thoughts when we get to Lessa's backstory.
Holy shit. Alessa doesn't get enough respect from everybody. She really doesn't. She doesn't get any respect at all. I hated that in the first book.
You really won't like the opening of Dragonflight.
Okay. What did you want to talk about with Sylvina, though?
I don't know. I mean, there's only so many ways we can say she's awesome and really sweet and nice. There are things about her I didn't know reading this that are fun context that I think gets implied and or not implied at all. That apparently gets like filled in by later books, like the one specifically about again Robinson and all the other masters and their youths. Like, okay, Sylvina and like Robinson used to have a thing. They had a bit of a thing back in the day, which sort of explains how they're so tight, and also how, you know, she keeps him from accidentally letting this place fall into pieces. Or, you know,
killing himself.
Or killing,
like, it's pretty
or killing himself.
That he won't eat unless Sylvina forces him to sometimes.
Yeah. You know, he's one of those creative types. The people that are bored by eating.
Mood.
She's very fun.
She's also boredom, or is it just that you're so busy with something you forget that you haven't ate?
Is it the ADHD, or is it I just genuinely forgot? How about this? We've talked a little bit about Menolly's relationship to the other hold girls and also to Dunka, the woman in charge of the dorm. Let's talk about Sylvina as like the other significant woman in the house and how she relates to the rest of the women going around the hall. You know, what are your thoughts there?
She's kind of like Menolly, where she doesn't associate with them. There's the ones who work in the kitchen staff who work under her, like Abuna, who was, She was really mean to Camo. I didn't like her. But she explicitly says to Menolly, Dunka is an old hag who's set in her ways and does not treat people fairly. But I have a use for her, so I keep her around, which is why she hasn't been kicked out. Which, you know, is fair and valid. But she pretty much explicitly says, I'm using her, and you're not to tell her this, but hey, you never say more than one sentence at a time, so I'm not worried about it. Which, you're kind of playing all your cards on the table, but it seems like everybody lets their guard down around Menolly. Like, they're positive she's not gonna say shit to anyone.
I mean, except for like the people that don't want her to know they're part of spy missions.
Yeah, that's the
That goes
only thing they
unsaid.
keep from her, and I think it's because they're worried it would make her anxious more so than anything else. I think that's the only thing
I
that's
can't let her
stopping
know
them
she's
from just
training me
telling
for a
her.
spy mission. She'd be very nervous.
She would be so nervous. She would not be a good spy.
It would be so upsetting to her.
She would be like, but I thought we just taught history and like helped people. And they're like, we do by spying.
We help and teach people so much by spying on people. I can't.
It works out, Menolly. You don't have to worry about it.
Purdy's having a bit of a moment right now. It's a bit divided. There are a lot of new people that came from the past, you'll recall, and they're not particularly decent. You'll find out how very not decent they are when we get to Dragon.
Wait, people came from the past?
Wait, don't you remember that? That was part of how Lessa saved everybody, by going back and bringing old dragon riders.
Also, Thread apparently just started recently falling, because Menolly can remember a time before Thread fell, but Thread in the forward fell thousands of years ago?
Yeah, it comes every couple hundred years.
Oh.
That's why the dragons are here. And, like, the culture built around maintaining dragons and passing along lore that doesn't change over the course of centuries, so people will know how to take care of themselves when the thread does come.
I just thought it was constantly falling.
No. It's a cycle. Well, yeah, oof. Wow, okay. When we get to Dragon Flight, don't worry, they get into it. There was a long interval between Thread, and that's sort of why nobody was prepared for Thread to arrive, and they needed Lessa specifically to come in and save the day. And also, I guess Flar was involved, but who cares about Flar?
He does not even get mentioned in this book. Fëanor gets mentioned 3 times, and he just...
Well, that's because Fëanor's a nice guy.
Isn't there. I don't know if that's the good kind of nice guy or the nice guy.
I guess the good kind of nice guy. I mean, he does actually seem to have someone who's romantically interested in him, independent of, like, Dragon Musk or whatever. It's very, anyway...
It's just,
very fun stuff.
Sylvina is clearly in charge and the second in command, though the other masters take shots at her randomly, and honestly, if she dated Robinson, I could see why they would take shots at her randomly. I just assumed it was because, like, she's a woman, and sexism is prevalent in the series, no matter what fucking book you're reading, apparently. I mean... that was what struck me as odd. The masters all just randomly take shots at her, but she takes shots at them all the time, so it seems like it's all in good fun. Nobody seems pissed at each other except for Dunka.
This is the workplace culture around here. A little bit of shot taking. I love what ᴗᴗᴖᴗᴖᴗ says about her, that, like, skilled head woman, keeps the hull from falling apart, keeps it running every day. Very talented musician. You didn't know that? Very talented musician.
You should really listen to her sometime.
You should listen to her sing. This is the voice teacher again saying that you should listen to this woman sing. Probably because he taught her. ᴗᴗᴗᴗ is great. Read the book for ᴗᴗᴗᴗ alone. He's excellent. I love him. I have to assume that McCaffrey wrote him to be played by specifically Orson Welles just because of every description about him. It's just, he's an excellent man.
Holy shit! Oh, that would fit perfectly.
And the one dig he has about her is just that she is not a voice teacher, which is why that Menolly should listen to him when it comes to voice teaching and her for everything else.
He says that. He's like, Robinson's a fool, but you should listen to Sylvina. Unless it's about your singing, you listen to me. I'm in charge. No one else matters.
He's just
says that, and she's just like, okay, and then she leaves, and she fucking laughs at him.
Let's just talk about the masters, why don't we? Starting with ᴗᴗᴗᴗ, who is like very big man, never leaves his desk in his office, sleeps there, eats there
in 30 seconds flat.
Yeah. He is either really old or just like particularly skilled at going to sleep quickly. We're not sure which.
honestly, if you're working in the master hall and you're constantly having to work on stuff, take your naps while you can. That might just be a skill he learned.
Yeah.
Better than Robinson, who hasn't slept in 3 days by the time the dragons hatch.
I haven't slept in days. What? Eating? ᴗᴗᴗᴖᴗᴖ, meanwhile, is like, I don't leave this desk. The food comes to me. The naps are on cue.
Everybody works around my schedule. Except for
ᴗᴗᴗᴗᴗᴗ.
Except for Sylvina.
Except for Sylvina,
she doesn't have to deal with me.
Except when it comes to singing.
Except when it comes to singing.
As per the usual. He's just solid personality. He's Pimer's, like, Master Pimer's, like, one of his special students, because Pimer is a really skilled singer. Have I mentioned that he hasn't hit puberty yet?
He's a tenor, which I was thinking he's only like 10 or 12.
Yep, tenor.
What is he gonna do when he's no longer a tenor?
It's funny you should say that.
Are they gonna, like...
Have you seen the cover
what the church used to do? Are they... listen for a second. Are they gonna do what the church used to do and make him a eunuch?
Well, it's interesting that you would ask that question specifically, because the main character of the last and final book in the Harper Hall trilogy happens to be Pimer.
Oh, he gets a dragon! He gets a fire lizard!
He gets a fire lizard. I don't know why the painter on, like, I just held up the little book with the illustration on it. And I don't know why Pimer is drawn like a very attractive, nearly shirtless drummer with, big old abs and a, like, dangly vest that, doesn't cover nearly enough or covers far too much, depending on how you look at it.
He doesn't work out.
He doesn't work out. He doesn't, in the context of what I think they're trying to represent here, it doesn't make sense either. Also, he's like maybe 13 in this picture. I don't know why you drew him as like a 25-year-old hunk.
I don't know. That's confusing.
I mean, this is all,
Do they? Because the church used to do that to keep, like, young boys singing on the choir, because, like, women weren't allowed to sing on choirs for a really long time.
Like,
some well-trained men can still sing tenor after they've hit puberty, but not a lot can.
Yeah, I will tell you that the matter of him, his voice changing is the first primary conflict. I will tell you that much.
Interesting.
That is what starts the plot a-rollin' in Dragon Drums.
But, ᴗᴗᴗᴗᴗ is really interesting. I kind of expected him to be a sexist asshole. Because he's really mean. He's really mean the first time he's introduced.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
like, that's the thing about all the masters. They're just, except for Gerent, they're all kind of jerks on the first.
I mean, yeah, but Dominic is a different kind of jerk than ᴗᴗᴗᴗ and the sexist apprentice training asshole.
It's all,
ᴗᴗᴗᴗ literally makes a comment about, oh, you have a good voice for a girl. So that's where I was waiting for him to just keep being horrible. Dominic doesn't make a comment like that. Dominic's just like, you're alright for a newbie. And that's valid. That is fair.
And then we sit down and play some of his super high level music theory stuff. And then she just wipes the floor with him and the journeyman.
She genuinely likes it. She's not sucking up to him. She's not making fun of his music. She thinks there's a purpose for it, and she loves it. And he's like, I can work with this kid.
I need you. I need more of you.
I wish other people were like you, because everybody thinks my music doesn't have a lot of purpose. But
or they can't play it.
It's literally, the whole point of it is supposed to be hard and make you explore it.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just like, I love it, let's do more. And he's like, I can see why you have so many people willing to defend you on your first day here.
I get it now.
I get it.
And he doesn't even realize how much, like, he scares her. Like, there's an actual line after this little episode, or maybe in the next episode, when she's sitting down with the two journeymen and him, where
Isabel point out, you are literally terrifying her. And he's like, I don't scare you, Menolly, do I? What?
He's like, what? Really?
Wait. It makes me wonder, does he realize he scares all of the apprentices? Because even the boys are terrified of him.
I mean, he says, like, I'm not, I don't dislike you. The only thing I dislike is, laziness and unattentive students, and that is not you. And it's very much like, oh, so this is just your default normal mode of behavior. You just, oh man. Apparently. It's like, yeah, like you were saying, sort of evolving social dynamics and like how characters, especially mentally, relate to each other is like the evolving drama. The drama is, oh, Dominic isn't a jerk. Oh, ᴗᴗᴖᴗᴖ is kind of sort of the nicest of the rough and mean, masters, and he like cares about his craft and also like respects her, and it's like clearly well-minded.
I would argue Dominic is the kindest out of the rough and gruff teachers, but
true.
We could disagree on that. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
they're both okay.
Hashtag Team ᴗᴗᴗᴗᴖ. Like, rate, and subscribe.
Leave in the comment if you're Team ᴗᴗᴗᴗᴗ or Dominic.
Team Old Dive, you're cheating. Obviously, Old Dive is the nicest. We're not counting him. He's not a music teacher.
Who the fuck is that? Old Dive is mentioned, but I don't remember what he does.
He's the master healer.
Oh, he's the one who gives her the ointment. I also don't remember what Jarrett did. He didn't really make an impression. He's the guy who... Is he the guy who makes instruments?
Yeah, he's the instrument maker, and she, like, goes through, and she's, like... Remember, she's trying to find, like...
Yeah, she accidentally picks up Robinton's thing he made when he first became a journeyman.
She's, like, just really trying to find one guitar that doesn't suck, and they all, like, have some or other problem. The string's not working.
It's too good to be played by her.
Yep.
And it's literally Sibel.
Yeah, she finds his. She finds... Or was it Sibel's or was it Jarrett's? I can't remember which.
I'm pretty sure it's Sibel's, because Jarrett looks at him and says, "There's no way she knew that was yours."
It's so she accidentally finds the best one in there and doesn't take it. So
it might have been Sibel saying that to Jarrett, but it was one of the two. Jarrett did not make a big impression on me, but he was all right.
And then she just takes the Master Harper's used one as the second best.
Which submits her place as his apprentice. His apprentice, unofficial apprentice. Because he doesn't have time to teach her, but he wants to, like, claim her as his apprentice.
She's one of his special ones.
Which can be really creepy, and another reason why I was on edge, so...
Yeah. Fair.
It gets mentioned several times, but when he's actually around her, he's not creepy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just the phrasing and how nobody in this hall realizes how weird that is. Like, no one realizes how weird that could be.
A professor having special favorites.
Yeah, it's like I kind of wonder if it's expected.
It seems, I mean, Pimer makes it sound like it's sort of like part and parcel of like the structure of the hall, in the same way that we have like teaching assistants and assistants. They have, favorite apprentices.
Mm-hmm.
Each master has one specifically, or not one specifically. Each master has a handful specifically. Robinton has like 3, I think.
So how the school works is that newly brought in apprentices work under a master. So the master's oldest student that is at the Harper Hall, even if they're a journeyman, takes care of the youngest, newest student. So Sibel has to take care of Menolly because she's technically learning under Dominic as her main teacher. Mm-hmm. But she's unofficially Robinton's student. So
as is Sibel.
She's just getting the best of, like, both worlds.
It's very, she's getting into all the best training just to see what she can do.
Those are the two best teachers you can have. And Dominic apparently fought for her because he really, really wanted her to be his newest student. So...
oh, man. There's also Marshall.
Marshall's an asshole.
Marshall, who's the, like one of them had to be a sexist jerk that was, like, really didn't want her and wants to kick her out. And that's Marshall.
His voice is described as horrible at the beginning that makes her feel sick to her stomach. And honestly, I get that.
Like, the one, like, kind of, and that's sort of the one that I disagree kind of with Robinton the most on, because he gives a speech about Marshall at the end where he's like, yeah, Morsel's sexist, but it's kind of a running joke around here. And, you
That
know,
doesn't really defend it.
yeah, that doesn't defend it.
It's like when
Give
a
him the
tenured
respect he's
professor.
due as a master, and then, like, ignore him because he won't be with them.
It's like when a tenured professor goes on a rant about LGBTQ and how they don't agree with how they don't agree with one group of people within that larger group, but all the other professors who work with them are just like, yeah, they have tenure, so all we can really do is just make jokes about them for being so bigoted. It's not great. It's pretty fucking awful.
It's just bad. It's a bad situation.
Luckily,
at least she doesn't have to deal with him.
I kind of get why Sylvina said she had a use for Dunka, even though Dunka was horrible, and like literally got introduced by calling all the other girls their lazy sluts. Yeah, she's pretty fucking awful. I think Sylvina said it is because nobody else wants to take care of the girls.
Yeah.
Or can, because there's so few women there. But they don't have a reason not to have another teacher replace Marshall. Like, they don't.
I guess it's just, yeah. And it's not like he's teaching anything unique. He's the one that, like, instructs the apprentices on general music theory.
Yeah, he teaches the basics, which, you know, that's the first thing you learn.
That's the first thing that all the journeymen are doing.
I feel like the journeyman, one of them could easily take over. You don't need him.
I think he kind of vanishes into the woodwork in subsequent books, fortunately.
Honestly, he vanished into the woodwork at the end of this book.
Yeah, he pops up again at the very end to be angry about a secret meeting among the masters that we later find out is about, surprise, surprise, you know, Menolly at the end being raised up to be a journeyman because, of course, she has all the skills.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just the one negative, you know, naysayer, literally.
I do want to, and we can kind of switch this to the "did you mean that" topic, because I kind of feel like the reason why he was pushed out is because the other masters realized he was triggering Menolly's trauma and just worked their asses off to make sure she never had to deal with him again. That's why she got moved out of Dunka's place into, like, the dorm with all the other, with all the masters instead of the boy apprentices. They were like, that might cause trouble too, so we're just gonna put her in the master's hall, where we know nobody's gonna, like, make fun of her. And then they just never let Marshall, like, be near her again. Or if he is, one of them quickly, like, gets him to leave. It kind of feels like they realized what was happening with her trauma and was like, okay, this needs to stop. Let's get him out of here. Which, you know, you'd think, if he's so horrible, and he's training all the other women who don't get to advance past basic classes, maybe replace him. But this is a fantasy book written years ago, probably years before I was born. I don't know when 70s. It was published. Oh shit, yeah, definitely years before my mother was born. So it is what it is.
79.
98 minus 16. Yeah, my mom was born in like 82. 81, so it was before she was born.
It's very, yeah. So much of, like, these interactions are sort of about the, you know, like we keep saying, you know, Menolly and her relationship to her own trauma is kind of the key thrust of the book, isn't it? I mean, one, like, thing that kind of embodies that and is sort of the main, like, outward demonstration of her progression is, like, all the time she tries to and doesn't really ever ultimately explain why she's so upset when people talk about things like how excited they are about her writing stuff or how much they want her to go out and work on her music and stuff like that. Like, she doesn't ever, until the very end, put into words, hey, the reason that I start crying whenever somebody says they want me to write music is because, you know, I come from a world where I got brutally beaten because of that. When, like, my hand got injured, my mom took it as an opportunity to try and permanently damage my hand sufficient enough that I couldn't play in the future. Like, it was very, you know, and that's why I'm sad and miserable, and it hurts to talk about this and to try and carry this.
That's why I can't believe any of you genuinely like my work, because anytime I made songs before, bad stuff happened. And we should have put a word up talking about how there is child abuse and, like, abuse from parents in the segment. If you saw our first video, you probably realized it was gonna get brought up again. Because it's just a continuation of the last story, and this is the biggest theme.
Because, you know, the most interesting, one of the most interesting things you can do to a character that has been traumatized and has learned to expect to be abused, like, the most challenging thing you can put in front of them is no abuse. It's an environment where people do care about them and want to help them, but they, like, have to reach out some respect to really complete the journey, and they have to learn and figure out how to get to that point where they can do that, because they already have enough internal conflict that is going to be telling them to be terrified and afraid at all times. And if you as a writer can properly convey that, you've got a story that's full of conflict internally, even if externally it might seem like a character is just getting handed everything.
Yeah, and something I hate is when a character is thrown into a clearly traumatizing situation and then it doesn't affect their life.
Yeah.
And Menolly is one where it looks like it didn't affect her life, but because the whole story, you see her in her thoughts the entire time.
Yeah.
You are well aware how it's constantly affecting every single moment of every single day and every interaction she has with someone else.
It's definitely, and I love how much the book is constructed to benefit that, because it's not, there's no skipping around really in this book. This book, it takes place over the course of literally a week. Like, it is actually, on the whole, a surprisingly dense series of things that happen in her first week here at the Hall. But it makes sense in the context, obviously, of, like, all the things happening in the story. But she does an excellent job, Anne McCaffrey, of conveying all the individual drama every day and the weight of that drama, and how, like, she's feeling about what happened yesterday and is anxious about what will be happening in the afternoon, and of course the nebulous tomorrow that is always hanging over, and what all could happen at any of those points. So you're constantly in an ever-shifting psychology of a very anxious person who's in a very stressful environment, who is trying to figure out a bunch of new people. It's always a bunch of stuff going on, and it's very interestingly conveyed.
And I do want to bring up, and I have the paragraph pulled up, I might cite it in a second, but I do want to bring up the fact that she didn't choose to display her trauma then or talk about it then. It's because she literally couldn't avoid it. Avoid mentioning it anymore, because everything was building up. It was right after the fight. She had to go talk to the guy of the father of the guy she punched in the face, and she doesn't know if he knows yet or not, and she's just panicking. And the paragraph goes, she tried to stop the words that were threatening to burst from her, but she couldn't. Not with Pimer's face contorted with distress for her, and Sibel quietly encouraging her to speak with the sympathy so plain on his face. And then she finally goes in to describe the events that happened to her. And their first reactions is not disbelief. It's not assuming she's just doing it for attention because maybe she wants to get out of trouble from the fight or anything. It's they genuinely believe her. And that's so refreshing. Like, that's so refreshing. The people, the Dragon Riders at the Wear believed her too, but she didn't get to explain her story except for the once, and then everyone else knew. And they all knew before she was ready to talk about it. And in this is her choosing to talk about it, and they're just like, and I literally asked you to teach me how to gut a fish. That was rude as fuck. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. You don't have to, Menolly. And she's like, I'm not explaining this because I don't want to help you. I can, and I want to because I can. But, like, this is why I have so many issues.
This is the reason for this. It's such a great reveal, and it is such an excellent moment for her and all of her friends. And it sort of cements this, like, reality that she has a support group now. She has people that do genuinely care about her. Even Pimer.
She got to choose when they found out.
Yes.
Robinson didn't go around and tell everyone. Yep. It seems like he told Sylvina, but Sylvina also kind of needed to know so she could properly prepare for Menolly. But it was her choice when to reveal this information, whereas at Brendan, I don't remember how they're referred to, she didn't. And I think that's a big difference, because while she had a very clear potential support group there, she was uncomfortable right from the get-go. And I think that plays a really obvious part in it. But, I don't know. I love that it's consistent. And it doesn't just magically get fixed, and she's not, even at the end when she's getting promoted, she still has those insecurities, but they don't feel like they're the only aspect of her character.
So here's a thread. We're starting to edge up on time here. We say that every episode. We always edge up on time here. We're never gonna have an episode where we're under. Imagine us in a couple of weeks. We sit down.
We had an episode where we were under, and I think it was one of the middle ones. I think it was Cat in the Hat we were under.
Well, yeah. There's only so much you can say about Cat in the Hat. Maybe we just got tired of inviting the madness. Maybe it'll happen again. Maybe we'll run out of things to say, or we'll just be like, no, that was sufficient. That was sufficient. Maybe it'll happen on Puff the Magic Dragon. Maybe that'll be the short episode.
Noah, do you know me? I always have more to say.
Same. So there's a thread in this book that I think is kind of interesting, because on the one hand, I'm not sure how much McCaffrey meant it to be an intentional thread, but it's certainly an element that is deliberately planted there in some respects. There's a through line of ableism. There's also a lot of disabled characters in here, and obviously you don't need the former, don't need the latter to have the former, but having them both certainly sheds a lot of light on how the writer is writing, and also the world they've built, and how they're handling characters. We've mentioned a couple of times that there's somebody that works in the kitchen, the butcher, I think, Camo, who is in charge, for obvious reasons, of helping feed the fire lizards who need a lot of meat. He also happens to be very he happens to be neurodivergent in a way that sort of let's see here. I'm afraid I don't. He's neurodivergent. He has sort of can you describe it? I'm trying to see if I don't keep my words here.
It's never explicitly explained what he has, but it kind of comes off that he's either autistic or just vaguely supposed to be special needs.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Such that interactions with him generally, involve kind of
people being horrible to him.
Yeah, well, yeah, that, but even the positive ones involve kind of treating him kind of childishly.
Yeah, and even Menolly has a problem where she starts talking down to him. But she does that because everybody else does it, and she just assumes that's the only way to talk to him. But even as the book goes on, it becomes clear that he doesn't need that.
She interprets that being the only positive way to interact with him, as if that is necessary to have interactions with Camo, when it's very clear that he's, at points that he kind of, he has a lot higher level of understanding than, social understanding than she initially gives him credit for. And it's sort of, what is complicated is the fact that the author kind of you want an object lesson in how most casual insults are really ableist. Read this book and how the author describes Camo as thick or a dullard or any number of weird things that you might I don't know. if you're not the sort of person that, if you're not up to snuff and aren't attentive about ableist language sneaking into your own like verbiage, you wouldn't notice it. But it's like you read this book and it becomes very obvious, like, holy cow, these are really horrible, hurtful things and very intentionally dehumanizing. And this is what the writer is using to describe this character.
And honestly, a few of them even snuck by me until Noah pointed them out, because while reading, I wasn't actively thinking about that. So I wouldn't say it's easy to miss, but it's easy not to realize what is going on there with the language. And it's also there in other moments throughout the book too, with like racism and sexism, but there's a lot more going on because sexism is pretty an apparent point the book is trying to tackle, but the ableism is not what the book's trying to tackle, and it's just thrown in there a lot. I was really uncomfortable when like some of the kitchen staff started to chase him around and beat him.
What? I missed that point.
Abduna or whatever her name was, she does that. When he goes to try and feed the dragons stop dragging a pig carcass through, she chases him around and like tries to hit him. And that was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The fight, when it breaks out, he goes in to try and help Menolly and the dragons, but accidentally hits Menolly, and because it's a middle of a fight. And so everybody tackles him and forces him to the ground. Like, they're
very uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable. Like,
it's just... it very much echoes what things you may have heard about how kids and adults are treated in less than scrupulous and special needs environments. It's quote unquote maybe earlier best practices for restraining students, and it's very gross.
And it's stuff that even happens to this day. Like, there are students who need stuff repeated to them, and Camel probably does need stuff repeated to him sometimes to remember things. But there's a way to do it respectfully, which my mom works at a school as a teacher's assistant for students with special needs. And the way they talk to their students is a lot different from how this book portrays people talking to Camo. And I was like, that's a bit weird, but...
Yeah. It's funny, now that I think about it, only I think Pymer kind of doesn't talk down to Camo.
Yeah,
which is telling because he's also a child, but he actually like talks to Camo as an equal.
He does, and I think that really kind of points out how Camo can just be talked to, because Piper reminds Camo of things sometimes that he may have forgotten, but it's usually after Camo walked away and then didn't do what he was supposed to do and then comes back to talk more. And Pimer's like, no, remember, you gotta go do that thing. And then Camo will go back to the kitchen and finish his task before coming back again. But that's it. Pimer doesn't do it as much as... Pimer doesn't talk down to him as much as everybody else.
Yeah.
But...
What is interesting, I think, and what makes this worth, I think, a topic of discussion is the fact that he's, besides Camo, there is... actually physically disabled character that gets introduced in this book as well. Master Oldive. It's kind of blink and you'll miss it, but Oldive has like a spinal deformity that gives him a hunch. Like,
I did not pick up on that. I did not notice that. I know there was somebody who had like an injured leg and so they limped around, but that was one of the
that might also have been Oldive actually, but
that was one of the older characters, and I did not catch their name because they aren't brought up a super lot. So I picked up on that. I did not realize Oldive also had a hunch, or like, that he had one.
Yeah. It's sort of funny, actually, because, he's there to take care of Menolly, who's still got these torn up feet.
Mm-hmm.
And like when he first like meets her, you know, is sitting down to treat her in her room, he turns around and like jumps for a second because he doesn't realize she has a dragon on her neck. He assumes for a second that she also has a hunch because there's this big massive dragon hiding under her hair. So
yeah, no, I did not pick up on that at all. I did.
Yeah.
There
so
is...
it's what strikes me, I guess, is funny is that Master Oldive at no point is like you said, you didn't even notice it. Nobody ever treats him like with any like apparent like aberration or like, you know, abuse or anything. In fact, it doesn't get mentioned, I don't think, by any of the masters or anyone in any of the contexts. So much again, you missed it. You didn't even notice. The author doesn't even bring it up again, I don't think, except in one or two points when it becomes pertinent.
There is a moment with Master Dominic who, while he's requiring Menolly to play, she tries to explain, well, my hands really hurt.
Yeah.
And this happens with Marshall too.
Yeah.
And they both tell her, I do not care if you can't stretch your fingers, you will play how it needs to be played. And then Dominic realizes, oh, you actually have a gash. And he's like, okay, I should have lessened up, but I want you to still try. And Marshall just doubles down like he does not care.
Marshall uses that as his excuse to try and get her kicked out.
Yeah.
That she can't. He like tries to frame her not being able to do that as like, oh, you just don't have the fundamentals, you're terrible, you gotta go. Even though she's spent the last like 2 hours, you know, schooling him at his own drills.
Exactly. And he tries to say she'll never be able to play like a true master, so she should either pay to be here like the rest of the girls or just leave. And everybody's like, you do realize that she has a cut, right? And he's like, I don't care. It's not going to heal. There's no point in trying with her. And like, I noticed that.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. Which gives us 3 characters in an interesting framework, right? On the one hand, we have Oldive, who has a physical disability, and it doesn't get mentioned. We have Menolly, whose physical disability might go away with like therapy and practice,
but also might not. But that doesn't
also
mean...
might not, and is being used as a potential excuse for other systemic like bigotry against her. You know, the systemic sexism, which is everywhere. And then we have Camo, who, unlike the other two, the language that the author specifically uses around him is very much designed to keep his disability, his neurodivergence, in the forefront, and also kind of to dehumanize him in tandem with the way that the other characters do so, with the way that they talk to him.
I kind of wonder if it's because the other two are very clearly like physical issues.
Yeah.
And Camo's isn't.
Yeah. That seems to be the main difference.
And
there's so much. What makes it so much more horrible, I think, on some level, is the way that kindness to Camo is used as a metric of moral fiber among other characters. Not too much. So it is there with Pimer, kind of, but not really. It doesn't really get mentioned with Pimer, but it does with Sylvina. And I think to some extent the author is trying to do the same with Menolly, in the sense that like her patience and like patience, quote unquote, with, you know, treating, you know, Camo
holy
with like
shit. I did not notice that either.
Is an extension of like her kindness and empathy to other like, you know, people, and you know,
I can see that, but with Menolly we see that with everybody.
Yeah.
The only people she's not kind to are the people, or the other girls who really treat her like shit. Even Aldina, who shows like, yeah, I'm gonna keep doing all this awful thing in front of people, but the moment they're gone, I'm gonna go back to the masters and explain it's not your fault.
Yeah.
Like, even she, Menolly, is willing to give a chance to.
Yeah.
So while I could definitely see that being utilized for Sylvina's character and like trying to give her brownie points, I don't know if that was like explicitly supposed to be a tool for Menolly's.
Yeah.
Because it seems like Menolly treats everybody that way.
True. I don't know.
But that is an interesting thought, and it could very well have meant to be the point. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I didn't read it as that, but I missed a lot of that explicit language in here, so I picked more so up on how people of color are always described as the black the black girl or the brown man.
It's rough. It's really, really rough. I'm kind of it's sort of the how Camo is specifically described in the language around him. Like I said, good object lesson in how like casual ableist language is everywhere and how horrible it is when you see it in its original context. Also, I don't know, just like as a consequence of that, is kind of the most uncomfortable thing in the book. And I'm kind of nervous if I like independently of this podcast start reading further, especially into the Master Harper of Pern, because here's something I didn't know until I was reading like The People of Pern, which is like a hybrid encyclopedia / portrait collection, where it mentions that Camo is the child of Robinton and Sylvina.
Oh, they don't act like it.
Yeah, they don't act like it, do they? I mean, parent-child relationships are kind of weird on Pern because they have the whole fostering tradition, but
I
also...
I didn't even know Lessa had a kid until this book.
Yeah,
his name
that's
is
the thing.
Lessa. It's got an F in front of it, and I think it's got an N at the end, and that's it. Fulesson.
Yeah, Fulesson. It's just their names.
That is... I kind of wonder
Fulesson.
if that was added after this book was published.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if that was a retcon, or maybe it was something that like she had in her notebook and then decided to later canonize. The idea is that they mention in this like Wikipedia encyclopedia summary just that he, you know, they blame it being a difficult birth. So I guess the assumption is this has something to do with a lack of oxygen immediately after birth, which I'm sure somebody with actual like experience in the medical field could like explain to me what that is meant to imply. Suffice to say, it's very,
It could just also be something that was believed at the time and might have been disproven later. I personally don't know enough.
Yep. I mean, I know that lack of oxygen can be a troublesome thing at any point in life.
Yeah.
And can cause developmental frustrations. But suffice to say, I am anxious about reading future works that handle them because having seen this as the object lesson, I don't really trust the author's perspective to shift for the better and treat him more humanizing, especially if the future books might focus on the context of his parents and their view on him, because you know what's never fun? Stories about how unpleasant it is to have a disabled child.
That's
a never fun story to listen to.
Alright, so I might not end up liking Sylvina in the future.
I don't know.
I already was suspicious of Robinson for completely different reasons. Like, the school relationships between the students and the teachers are really weird. Maybe it's because we live in America, and like here there's a very large disconnect. Like there's a huge disconnect.
There's a very well practiced intentional disconnect.
Yeah. But that was just so weird to me. Like, the only teacher I knew outside of school growing up was one my mom was best friends with when I was born. And I never went to her school. She was the only person I knew who was a teacher, and I never knew her in that setting. That was it.
You know, I actually, like, I went in, like, high school, like, towards the end of high school, I actually did go to a boarding school. And so... there's some of this that kind of rings familiar in that, like, if you're in a small enough school and if everybody's there all the time, certain teachers will become large enough personalities that they will have a persona figure that, is significant among the student community, and maybe they'll be at other events outside of specifically classes. And so they might take on that kind of role, but it's never, a tight personal one. So, not that these are really tight personal either.
The only example of this I've seen in any of my schools would be when I went to, I'm going to name drop the old high school I used to go to, Ben Davis University. It was a program in Indianapolis where students could go and get a high school diploma as well as a college associate's degree. And it was supposed to be, you're in high school, yeah, but you're also in college, so you're getting a mix of both.
Oh, boy.
There was a lot of students who would, like, become friends with professors, because we were supposed to call some of our teachers professors if they had, like, college degrees. Well, all of our teachers had college degrees. If they had, like, masters are up, we call them professors instead of doctors, and other teachers we just call teachers.
Yeah.
And they would hang out with them after school at their house. And, like, do programs and shit. And, like, do community service together and stuff. Because, like, that was what a lot of people thought college professors and students did. Like, sometimes you might have a small enough class, it might be at a professor's house. But I was never comfortable with that shit. I'm still not comfortable with that shit while I'm in college. It's weird as fuck to me, and it was weird as fuck to me in this book.
That is an odd thing.
It's so weird to me. I don't understand it. I don't want to do it. I get so uncomfortable with that. I'll hang out with, like, master students, but I won't hang out with professors.
That's weird. That's a very weird thing. Oh, wow.
I don't know. It struck me as odd then. It struck me as odd in this book. Robinson very specifically makes me uncomfortable.
And with that, you'll forgive me. I know we're kind of over. We're going to have to skip a bit here, but we do have to move on to our conclusion. So, a full chord progression. There you go.
I was kind of hoping you would purposely fuck up the C minor stuff again to be like Menolly.
Oh yeah, just have some fun. C, and then we put the E minor on the wrong tab. Anyway, upon revisiting this story, my thoughts. I think the Harry Potter comparison still stands in that this is the better version of what I think Rowling was kind of shooting for. And not just because it's fun to, like, get on Rowling because of her being a trashy turf now, and I guess always. But also, truthfully, there's a solid structure to this world and plot and character construction that is lacking from those books, even as this one kind of goes through a lot of the same beats that her works would later follow. There's a reason I called it a Dumbledore speech at the end, It's very, it's the same trope that would later be drawn from by Joe. That Robin coming out and saying, here's why our character has such great moral fiber and why they deserve to get everything. And then they get everything. Because she does actually deserve to get everything, is the funny thing.
It's kind of interesting you said that, because while reading this book, I kept drawing, like, parallels to Ursula K. Le Guin's books.
Oh, I have never read any of those. I really need to.
They're really character-centric, and, like, a lot of the plot progression happens on characters' emotions rather than events that are
physical
happening.
Conflict.
Some of them are more about character emotions than events, and that's what this kept reminding me of. I can't remember any of the book titles right off the top of my head.
Would it have been anything in, like, what is it called? The Earthsea?
If that's the one where, like, storytellers have magical powers where they can bring stories kind of to life, but it's not very explicitly explained if it's actually stories coming to life or people just interpreting them and their imaginations running wild. If that's the Earthsea ones, sure. Those are the ones I read. The ones about the storytellers.
I don't think that's Earthsea. Maybe that's in Earthsea. I don't know. I don't know Ursula K. Le Guin. I really need to. I'm not well read. That's why we have this podcast.
But those are the kind of books that this kept reminding me of. And I don't know. I'm still kind of weirded out by some of the stuff brought up. But overall, I like the book. I like Menolly as the main character. I enjoy seeing her start to open up and learn how to work past her trauma and her history and, like, rely on other people and learn not to be alone anymore. Those are my favorite parts of the book, even though I can't tell if some of the sexism is because it's sexism in their world or sexism from the author or even, like, ableism or the racism in here.
And sometimes the difference doesn't even matter, really.
Sometimes it doesn't even matter. But overall, it's a good book. It didn't take too long to read.
And this is the biggest one.
It's the biggest one. This is the biggest
of the Harper Hall trilogy. The The
I-
main Pern books are a bit bigger.
I can't wait to see more of our better Bard spies. Like, I can't wait to see if Skyrim had actually made the Bard College a good spy system. What would
boy.
happen?
Well, we'll find out. This is I'm holding up one of the thicker actual main Pern books. This one is a flashback to a world that's being destroyed by a plague, something that isn't relatable.
That's great.
The next one.
Thanks, Noah. Really needed that.
We really need. That's why I have this up here because I've never read it, and it's about the plague. Next week is the thrilling conclusion. We've had our fill of Menolly. No, we haven't. But Menolly's had a full arc, and now it's time for Pimer, which is why we have Dragon Drums coming up next.
I thought next week was going to be.
Oh yeah, well not next week. Sorry. Next book is
Puff
Dragon
the
Drums.
Magic Dragon is next week. We're going to talk about the song and then the animated kid short that came as a result of the song. That's like 30 minutes long, so it's not really a movie, but it's not really a short. But it was advertised as a movie for kids back in the 70s.
Yes. The penultimate episode of our long month of dragons, but maybe not the second to last one, strictly speaking, because we will have another guest episode break in between that and the actual last episode of the long month of. You don't care. You'll listen to the episodes when they come to you because you're a hardcore fan of You Didn't Catch That, and you're loyal and you'll listen to everything we put out there. And when we start a Patreon, you'll be one of our top supporters.
And honestly, do we ever really have to stop talking about dragons?
Do we ever really? Is the thing? Maybe the long month of dragons.
We didn't talk about dragons in this episode, and it's a dragon book.
Oh, Frel, you're right. Oh, shards.
Turns out fire lizards are actually dragons. They have all the same emotions and skills as dragons, so they should be respected. And my choice over fire lizards over dragons is correct.
It's funny. I look forward to when we get to actually seeing the dragons as their characters and how they have conversations with the writers and seeing if your choice changes at all.
Probably won't, but maybe, who knows?
They do. I mean, because they do have characters and internal lives.
All right. Have a nice night, everybody.
Yeah, I have been Noah. With me, as always,
your newbie Taylor.
This has been You Didn't Catch That, and I am happy to say that you finally caught Dragonsinger by Anne McCaffrey.
Thank you for watching the video. If you liked our discussion, please subscribe to support our channel. Likes are wonderful and greatly appreciated too. If you want to see these episodes get made before they go up on YouTube, you can find links to our Twitch channels in the description below. We record the episode on both channels at 9 p.m. EST on Tuesday nights.